Calm down before you stress up the groove. The energy a little different when the blessings accrue. Hey, who you talking to? Just know I ain't no regular fool. Could be anything in the world, but I can never be you because I stand tall like I'm on my tiptoes. Baby, you think a little too small. I got big goals, baby. Hey, where the money at? Look, I just need the info. Pronto, I go and get it and split it with my kinfolk daily. And I'm the type of that might change my number on you. Yeah, that's how you react when people took a slumber on you. Pretty brown skin, baby, I can see the summer on you. You see all the bread, and I know it make you wonder, don't you, don't you, don't you? Ooh, I ain't surprised at all. Seen them rise and fall. Went up the mountain, it wasn't hard to climb at all. At the top, I found some relief. I finally got some peace. Carry on, but please don't mess up the mood. Yeah, I worked too hard for it. No, I need to beat it before you mess up the mood. Yeah, ooh, I worked too hard for it, and I need it, so please don't mess up the mood. Don't mess up the mood. Don't mess up the mood. Yeah, I worked too hard for it. Yeah, don't mess up the mood. Oh, it's so crucial, I gotta keep it. It's in the ass everywhere. No, it's not a secret, and I bet they didn't think that I'd ever get it. Everything you've done, I did it. The life you dreaming, I live it, and I'm coming in how you better get out the kitchen. Yeah, I could make a hit on whatever you pitching. Baby, let me fill up whatever you missing. Or you like it up at the top, it's a better view, isn't it? I'm not surprised at all, no way. Hey, what you need? Come on, just pay the fee. I supply it all. Went up the mountain and it wasn't hard to climb at all. At the top, I found some relief, you see. So please don't mess up the mood. Yeah, I worked too hard for it. No, I need to beat it before you mess up the mood. Alright. Ooh, I worked too hard for it, and I need it. So please don't mess up the mood. Don't mess up the mood. Don't mess up the mood. Yeah. Oh, come on. I worked too hard for it. Yeah. Don't mess up the mood.
After 28 years of a committed allegiance to the world of evangelical doctrine,
What
in
happened?
2010, I said, see ya.
Did you? Why?
It's not me, it's you.
Oh.
Specifically, your
Why?
anti-LGBTQ theology
That'll do it.
rooted in tragic and toxic misunderstandings of the Bible.
Hate that.
And now, I'm ready to take UnClobber to the next level.
Well, I'm excited.
Introducing UnClobber online courses. These
Tell us
in-depth
more.
courses are designed to show you, once and for all, that any attempt to use the Bible as justification for anti-LGBTQ beliefs is, in a word, wrong. So head on
Saw
over
that
to
coming.
unclobber.com today and check out the all-new UnClobber online courses. And let's keep moving toward a world
I
in which
agree.
the Bible is no longer misused for the discrimination and the
Let's cut
judgment
it out.
of our lesbian and our gay and our bisexual, our transgender and our queer siblings. Amen.
And we're live. What up, friends? Happy Wednesday to all of yous. I almost said good afternoon, but I don't know what part of the world you're in. it might be evening for you, or maybe you're in Hawaii and it's still, I believe it would still be pre-morning, not post-morning. So let me know where you're watching from so I can get a sense of who's out there. I see we've got Peoria in the house. Amy, I believe I owe you an email response, correct? I think you've reached out about that and I don't think I've responded yet. My apologies. I'll get back to you. Out of the four, what's up out of the four? I believe this is one of the first times I've seen you on the show and I like your comments. Thank you. Hey, so today we're going to talk about 4 ways that I think people might use their privilege. So I've been talking about privilege for the last couple weeks here on the show. And then later on in the show, guess who's here? That's right. The one and the only, unless she's got a twin she hasn't told me about. Coach Yeamah is in the house, not literally in the house, although Yeamah, one day you want to come to San Diego and hang out in the house with me and Kate, that'd be super fun. And she's going to share with us spirituality of being queer, the gifts of being queer. And I can't wait to continue our Pride Month conversations with Coach Yeamah. So glad you're here. Welcome to Perspective Shift. Let's get to it. Look at the world that is being represented all around us. We've got Lucas in Brazil. Lucas, so glad you're here. We've got Brooke in London. So evening, we've got evening time in Brazil. We've got evening time in London. We've got Flint, Michigan. What's up, Haley? So glad that you are here. Yo to you as well. We've got Corey. I don't remember where Corey's at. I know he digitally attends the church in Nashville, but I don't think, Corey, are you in Texas? Is that correct? Or if you're trying to hide your identity, maybe you're in witness protection program and I just blew it. Now they know you're in Texas. Sorry about that. We've got hot and sunny Bremerton. Yes, Donna, sorry for the heat you're experiencing up there. We've got Odette coming in from Puerto Rico. So we are global. We are global here at the Perspective Shift show. What is Perspective Shift? I'm so glad you asked. It is my weekly newsletter, and you can see it down at the bottom here, this URL ticking along the bottom. If you head over there, you can enter in your email address and subscribe to Perspective Shift. And I send those out every Wednesday morning, nearly without fail, nearly. And even when I do fail, it's not failure. It's a growth experience as we all get to wait another week. But anyway, yes, so I write about religion and spirituality and psychology. Talk a lot about things relating to progressive Christianity. And for the month of June, which is Pride Month here in the States, I have been reflecting on specifically this idea of privilege. And part of that is because this month I also, and you saw that in the opening, I launched these brand new courses for my work with UnClobber. And so people have been checking those out at unclobber.com, and it's been a ton of fun. And for the month of June, you can enter in promo code PRIDE21 and save 21% off any of the courses there. But it got me thinking about, what does it mean to be a person of privilege, of which when you start to break down what that is, I possess many layers of it. So I talked about that several weeks ago. And then last week, if you were with us, I talked about what I call the 4 stages of kind of working from a place of awareness. Stage 1 to listening to the stories and experiences of those who don't have the privileges that you do. And then stage 3, like I call sitting. You just sit in the tension and you sit with the discomfort of it all, and you allow that to really do a work on you. And you don't move too quickly into stage 4, which I call act. So stage 4 is like, okay, so now I've moved from a place of awareness that I have it. I have done work and tried to understand the experience of how I got this privilege and what it means for those who don't have it. Then I've sat with that tension and then I show up into this place of, okay, now how can I be a part of making there be a world that honestly has less avenues of privilege and less sort of ways in which society makes it less hard for some groups of people. And then, but I kind of stopped there because I said, but I think we need to unpack that stage 4. I think we need to go a bit deeper with that and talk about, and so that's what today is. Today is now the sort of 4. I don't know if all of this work of mine is rudimentary and stuff I'm been learning for years and still learning. And so I do, by no means do I claim to be an expert in any of this, nor do I think that I've got the last word at all. But as far as I've been able to understand so far, there are, I think, 4 ways, and I know it's confusing, the 4 stages and now the 4 ways. I get it, it's confusing. But I think there's like 4 ways that people might then enter into this stage of like acting and working toward ending injustice in these ways. And so that's what I'm going to talk about today with you. And then in the second half of the show, we're going to have Coach Yeamah come on and share and talk and preach. Probably, if I know her, there'll be some back row hallelujah going on. Real quick, if you would like to, this is completely optional, but if you're watching me on the Facebooks and you haven't yet liked my page, you're welcome to do that. And if you're watching on the YouTubes, I welcome you to, you're welcome to, I don't know, I guess I welcome you to, click that subscribe button, and then we can hang out more frequently. So I do this live show every Wednesday at 2 p.m. Pacific. And here's how I often like to start it. I like this weekly thing too, Odette. Oh, we've got DC in the house. What's up, Justin? Glad you're here. Junior, welcome back to the show. Coming in hot from the, I believe that's the flag of the United Kingdom. We've got Phoenix. How's the weather there in Phoenix? You surviving the heat? I used to live in that area. It's not good. Speaking of heat, I'm drinking some iced coffee at the moment. What it is, quick backstory of the iced coffee, is we're going camping right after the show. I'm leaving, and the fam and I are camping for a couple of days. And so when we go camping, we bring our French press, which means I needed to get beans that I could coarsely grind for the French press. And so I got those this morning, and I had some extra. I'm like, well, I'll just make a pot of French press this morning as the way that I'll do my coffee this morning. And I was only able to drink maybe half of my thermos of the hot stuff. And then right before I got on the show, I'm like, oh, I'll dump the rest of it into, make some iced coffee out of it with a little bit of vanilla creamer, just to sweeten it up a bit in ice form. But our ice machine, I know this is riveting stuff. This is why you tune in for the show. Our ice maker and our freezer is currently not working, or at least not working well. I think it creates like a tray of ice every 12 hours, which is not a great ratio, especially for a family of 6. And so what I had to do to make my iced coffee is I poured it into a thermos, added a little bit of the creamer. Then I have various shapes and sizes of ice for my cocktail world. And so I have these long, like rectangular ice cube sticks that I will use for like highball glasses. So I stuck a long rectangular stick of ice into the thermos with the coffee, and I shook it all up and got it nice and chilled. And then I poured it into another cup, and I don't think you can tell, but in there I've got one of those like bricks, single bricks of ice that you might have for an old fashioned. And that's how I'm keeping my iced coffee chilled. That was a lot of time and energy spent on my iced coffee, but it happened. There's no going back. All right, let's go to the next scene where I throw a little computer on the screen, and then I add, where did it go? Why isn't the camera? No. Did I lose my NDI? Let's see, NDI, Safari. There it is. Great. And then reader version. Excellent. Now we're cooking. All right, I'm gonna run through this, and I'm gonna be relatively expedient with it, which is to say, I always invite comments and questions, and then I will periodically pause to check in with you about engaging with this material. But when I have a guest on, I like to try to do it relatively quickly, so I may not pause as often or engage with as many comments and questions. But here is what we're gonna talk about today: 4 ways to use steward? ? Privilege. Let's get into it. So last week, I suggested 4 stages that people move through during this process of coming to grips with their privilege and then figuring out what to do with it. And in short, and I mentioned this a minute ago, the stages are: stage 1, learn, you understand what privilege is, and if you've got them, what you have and why, how'd you get them. Stage 2, listen, hear the stories of those who don't have your privileges so that you can understand their experiences better. Stage 3, sit. Now, just sit in the discomfort of all that you've learned. Let it really settle in. Don't move too quickly from, okay, cool, I get it now, let's go change the world. As I said last week, that can cause some real issues. And then stage 4 is act. Finally, in theory, you might be now equipped to be part of the solution to some of the problem areas that contribute to such an imbalanced society in which certain identities are more privileged than others. But while I feel fairly decent about the work of stages 1 through 3 and what those look like, I confess that this fourth stage feels the least straightforward to me. It's possible, maybe even common, possibly, for people's well-intentioned efforts. I said this last week, the road to hell is paved with good intentions, right? It is possible for people with well-intentioned efforts in this fourth stage to not only be pretty ineffective, but then sometimes even counterproductive. I think not unlike the stereotype in heterosexual relationships where the guy always wants to rush in and fix the problem for the gal. Now, like all stereotypes, it's obviously not always true all the time. And, like most stereotypes, it clearly became a stereotype because there exists some predictable patterns that have played out in similar ways over a long period of time. And so when this particular stereotype plays out, usually the gal in this situation does not feel helped by the guy who's rushing in trying to just fix it. And this can add more layers of frustration and suffering. So perhaps with that kind of image in mind, maybe we can think through these 4 possible ways. And as I say at the end of this article, I don't claim that these are the only ways or that they're the best ways to talk about these 4 ways, but maybe 4 ways that in which privileged people might engage with this fourth stage of like showing up to now actually do some action, do some work. And the 4 ways are lead, collaborate, follow, or get out the way. Let's talk about this real quick. So option 1 is lead. Sometimes, perhaps the least often of times, after learning and listening and sitting with the ways in which our privileges slant the world in our favor, we might be called upon to lead the charge for change. Perhaps we're in positions of great authority and influence and power, and there might be some very heavy levers that only we have the access to move. Now, what that looks like to move those levers and which levers to move and when, all that will be tied to context of the situation. There's no one size fits all here, but I'm convinced that sometimes the best way, sometimes maybe the only way that significant changes that need to be made can be made is if those that have the most power use that power to make it so. You can imagine how there might be, for instance, like a tremendous movement at this grassroots level generated by loads of people who within this context don't necessarily have the same access of power, but sometimes nothing will ever truly change unless those at the top do what needs to be done as well. And I don't know if this is the best example, but as I was writing this, I was reminded of like Angelina Jolie when she filmed the Tomb Raider movie years ago in Cambodia. She had her eyes open to many humanitarian crises there and in nearby countries. And so she then dedicated years of her life and millions of her dollars and countless amounts of her energy toward relief efforts. And I've always admired how she leveraged her resources and her power to try and use those privileges that she had to do what she could. And I'm sure she's made mistakes in this area, and I'm sure she's learned ways that she could have done it better. But I'm also convinced that her work has done more net positive. So yes, sometimes, and I might suggest of the 4, this maybe ought to be the least frequently used move. Sometimes the right move in this stage 4 is to act with the posture of leading and leveraging every asset at your disposal. However, and I really encourage those of you who didn't get the newsletter to go check this out later. As a counter to this point, read this article called Beyond White Privilege by theology and ethics professor Drew G.I. Hart. In it, he pushes back against what I've just said, against the idea of stewarding privilege. And he says this. He says, we live in a society that has been oppressively controlled and dominated by white people for about 400 years. To put it bluntly and succinctly, a society dominated by white control can't be fixed by white people taking control of the situation. He goes on to say that if the answer to our racial problems is that white people, even well-intentioned, anti-racist white people, if the answer is that they have to keep running things and calling the shots and be the saviors, then I think we've missed the mark, he says. And I completely agree with him there. I think he's absolutely right. I think this cannot be the only approach of just white people being like, or any, again, that's just the example, but any sort of privileged people being like, all right, I'll lead the charge here. I'll make the change. And where he and I might disagree, and I don't know this gentleman, and the article is several years old. Where he might disagree is I still think there might be some times where it is good and or necessary to utilize this first posture of leading. But I might totally be wrong. Check back in with me in a year or two, and I might be like, you know what? No, I don't know that it's ever really good for people to use that first maneuver of leading. Maybe it's never a good option. So let's explore 3 more options in. Option 2, collaborate. All right, so if the invitation here isn't to use your privilege in a leading capacity, then what else might you do? Because let's be honest, a lot of the messes we are in, listen to me now, a lot of the messes we are in are a direct result of the wrong kinds of leadership. Now, personally, and I'm speaking now in my context of starting and leading a church over the last 7 years, I've had to confront my own leadership instincts multiple times and realize that even if my heart is in the right place, I'm still trained in and used to certain kinds of leadership maneuvers and actions. And so even my attempts to lead well have still at times been like trying to pick a lock with a wet lasagna noodle. It's just not the right tool for the job. So I think sometimes people with great privilege and access and power need to use that power to bring in other voices and perspectives for the purpose of collaboration. There might be contexts, for example, which of you just stepping down entirely or getting completely out of the picture is not realistic or may not be the wisest option for that context, but how might you diversify the decision-making so that more, and specifically non-privileged voices, are in the room? Recently, I learned about the organization Color of Change, an organization that helps people respond effectively to injustice. And they have this whole branch called Color of Change Hollywood. And their mission is, we consult on film and TV projects, partner with change makers inside the industry, work to raise standards around hiring and diversity, and elevate Black stories. And it's amazing. Please check out their work. It's amazing to see what they've done to collaborate with those in the most powerful seats in order to make meaningful differences in areas like how many people of color are in the writer's room or on screen or in decision-making roles, etc. Then there's this third option, which I'll call follow. Other times, maybe the right move is neither to lead or even to collaborate, but maybe the right move is to entirely divest yourself of any leadership and responsibility and say, I'm just here to serve. How can I help? And let's go back to my above statement about how sometimes even just having privileged people at all in the mix, even in a collaborative effort, can be ineffective or counterproductive. We privileged humans can often take up so much of the freaking oxygen in a given space that even in collaborative contexts, we can overpower. So sometimes the best thing a privileged person can do with their privilege is simply to step aside and wait for further instruction. I'm reminded of that scene in Frozen 2 when Kristoff comes blazing in on a horse. Do you remember this towards the end of the film? And he scoops up Anna as Anna's trying to escape the rock giants who are throwing these giant boulders at her. And immediately, do you remember what Kristoff says? What do you need? Kristoff wasn't interested in saving the day, nor even collaborating with Anna to figure out, okay, now what's the best next move? Let's talk about this. He's just like, he recognized, you're the expert here. I trust you. Tell me what you need and I will follow. And then option 4, I just call get out the way. And then finally, sometimes the best / right move is simply to sit down, shut up, and just get out of the way entirely. Sometimes even when we try and just show up for the sake of following, we're still just making things harder. And I think this posture in particular does a lot to honor and acknowledge what I mentioned last week, which is that oftentimes once us privileged folk have done work like listening and learning and sitting with it, we show up to these spaces of action only to finally realize, oh my God, people on the margins have been doing this hard work the whole damn time. So, just like get out of the way and let them get it done. I'm reminded of the social media campaign last year called #ShareTheMicNow, where 50 high-profile, highly influential women such as Julia Roberts, Kourtney Kardashian, Gwyneth Paltrow, handed, maybe I got some tenses mixed up there. They handed over their Instagram accounts to 50 Black female activists, celebrities, and entrepreneurs. And the goal was, quote, to magnify Black women and the important work that they're doing in order to catalyze the change that will only come when we truly hear each other's voices. And it was an incredible day filled with these amazing Black women, as well as, I think, a great example of this get out of the way maneuver when you have much privilege. And then I'll end with this little thought here. But which one and when? So those are 4 different postures that I've witnessed, that I've experienced in this work. And it's not an exhaustive list, but I think it does a decent job of covering the spectrum of ways that privileged people might engage in this stage of action. And here's the thing. It's not always obvious which of the above maneuvers, postures, ways of acting are the best or right one for any given context. Sometimes your instincts might tell you to lead when really you should follow. Other times you might be tempted to collaborate when the best move would just be to get out of the way entirely. Then again, you might think you should just totally sit down and shut up, but meanwhile, there are those desperate for you. No, you need to freaking like do a thing because only you are in the position to do it right now. And then to make it more murky, there's always going to be those who feel you should be doing another one of the 4 things instead of the one that you are doing. There's no monolith of opinion when it comes to how people ought use their privilege. There's no monolith. Words are hard today, I guess. There's no monolith of opinion when it comes to this sort of social justice work. There's going to be people with different opinions. And some people, for instance, have the opinion that the only thing privileged people should do is to always get out of the way. And while I might disagree with that sentiment, I certainly I respect it. Like I entirely hold space. Like, yeah, that makes a ton of sense that would be your perspective on it. So I guess what I'm trying to say is that if and when, and most of this has been sort of directed primarily at those who do have privilege. I'm trying to speak to my fellow folk in this. What I'm saying is that if and when you do attempt to engage in this type of social justice work, and you go through these 4 stages of figuring out how you're privileged and what that means and how that all plays out, and then you're ready finally to jump in and do stuff, just be prepared for the likely scenario in which you'll be criticized for, quote, not doing it right. Just be prepared. That's just part of it. Because the truth is, for some people, that is true. From their perspective, you are not doing it right. And then for others, they might think that you are. I don't, it's not always clear to me or obvious. What I do know is that it's murky, it's clunky, at times it can be discouraging, but somehow all of that belongs. And the last thing that we need to do is like just get defensive and throw our hands up and be like, oh, fine. If you just not going to accept my help, well, no, it doesn't really work that way. And actually, if that's going to be your attitude, maybe, yeah, just go home. If we can't learn to take some pushback, Colby, if you can't learn to take some pushback, some criticism, then yeah, maybe we should just go home and get out of the way. And yeah, this is has been and continues to be a growth area for me. 100%. Trying to actively practice holding space for other people to feel like my approach is wrong and to listen that maybe they are right in this. And there's also going to be times when people see your external actions as you're engaging in work in the world, and they have no context for your internal world, and so they'll make judgments just based on what they see. And that can suck, but that's part of it too. For example, a lot of this stage 3 where you are like sit with the discomfort, like just sit with it and listen and just sit in that tension, that's an internal experience. And there's no like definitive timeline for how long that one must sit. Like, it's not like, okay, spend 6 months just sitting in that, or 4 weeks, or 2 years. So you might have done a lot of work there and done some really good listening and learning and sitting. And then you're like, then you start sort of dipping your toes into doing some action. And the response is, no, don't do anything. You just need to sit with the discomfort. You just need to listen before you start trying to do anything. And in your mind, you're like, no, totally. And I've done that for a really long time. But there's no way that they know that. And maybe you just didn't sit long enough. Like, that's also possible too. I don't know. There's no clear playbooks for these things. So my point is it's inherently messy stuff. We got to have some thick skin to do this work. We've got to be willing to make mistakes, to be called out, to feel like we've been falsely accused of not doing work that maybe we've already done, and also, or be willing to go back and actually do more work in previous stages, because maybe they're right after all. Maybe we didn't do enough listening or learning or sitting. And then be okay with the diverse opinions on how we should go about working for change. My sense is that it takes a combination of all all four of those approaches that I listed. My sense is that it takes a combination of all four of them to make lasting change. We need people at the top, I think, to make big, bold changes. Like I said, to turn those levers that they might be the only ones that have the access to turn. We need people at the top and in the middle to broaden the diversity of voices to make collaborative, substantive decisions. And we need people stepping out of leadership altogether and opting to just trust that others can lead not only just as well, but even better. And then we need people with privilege to just get out of the way entirely for those who are doing amazing work, because oftentimes our very presence will just muck things up. Does it sound hard? Yeah, it is hard, and it should be hard. Like we're pushing against years and centuries of oppression and marginalization and ways in which injustices have woven themselves into the fabric of our society. So it's obviously going to be hard, but good gravy. I hope that we who have privilege are willing to put in the hard work, because this stuff matters way too much to just bail just because it's hard. And then I close with these words from Jesus. Much will be demanded from everyone who's been given much. And from the one who's been entrusted with much, even more will be asked. Or in the words of Spider-Man's uncle, with great power comes great responsibility. So may it be so. Amen. All right. Let's clear that. Okay. That was a lot. And like I said, oftentimes I will sort of check back in with the comments and questions, and I didn't do that. I just wanted to plow right through that because I do want to hear in a minute get to our guest, but I will just sort of poke through some of the comments to see if anybody had any thoughts on that. We got South Carolina in the house. What's up, Parker Finley? Good to have you. Oh, thanks so much, Phil Gonzalez. I appreciate that. Vince, what's up, Vince? Good to have you here. Vince says settler colonialism is evil and is the source of most of the problems that people of color face. Hashtag free Palestine, hashtag free Hawaii, hashtag free Lakota. Thanks for showing up here, Vince. Oh, good, Corey. I'm so glad. Glad we got to do this and be here together. Starkovich says, I'd love to hear your thoughts on proximity to whiteness and that impact on this privileged conversation. As an African-American, in nearly every scenario, we are the bottom of the tier. I confess I don't think I understand the question, and if I did, I don't know that I would have a good answer for it, Starkovich. I'd love to hear your thoughts on proximity to whiteness and that impact on this privileged conversation. So I apologize. I probably should be able to understand the question better, but maybe if there's a slightly different way to ask it, or maybe our guest will be like, no, I know what Starkovich is asking, and maybe she'll have a thought on it. But I love having you here, Starkovich. I love your questions. Thank you for being here. Yes, Alex, always better late than never. So yes, you're laughing at my good gravy usage. Yeah, I don't know how I got into saying that, but it's in my brain and I say it now. Okay, so those are my thoughts. And if you missed part of the show, again, you can see scrolling at the bottom there, the website to go and get my newsletter, Perspective Shift, and check out today's article where I suggest that these might be 4 ways in which a person with various degrees of privilege might figure out how to use that privilege in a way that is beneficial for the betterment of all. All right. I'm going to now get to our guest because I like her and she's fun and it's better when she's with us. Here we go. It's Yeamah.
Hello.
Hi. This is fun.
That was an amazing segment.
Oh, thank you.
I enjoyed that.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, as I was about halfway through, I'm like, oh, I didn't connect necessarily who my guest was going to be with what I'm reading, and I suddenly got a little bit self-conscious. Anyway, so that was nice of you to say. If you want to share, we could start by saying, did you have anything you wanted to add or take away or push back or reflect on? And if not, we can just dig into the queer stuff.
No, not really.
Yep.
I was taking it all in because it's beautiful how white people are learning how to navigate this space, and it's your conversation to be having, and I
Yeah.
don't want to be a
Okay.
part of it.
Cool. All right.
You know what
That
I mean? Like, I don't want to be the
100%.
one that comes from the outside, you know?
Yep.
Like, it's amongst, it's amongst family. Y'all figure it out.
One hundo. Yep.
That kind of thing.
Totally.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well,
Hmm.
I love your balloons behind you. Hope everybody can see. Yeamah's repping the pride
Yes.
balloons.
Okay. Are we into the pride? Okay.
We are into the pride. I
And
tried to
think all the
set.
parades are happening this weekend.
San Diego has always done it in July, so ours is going to be in a couple weeks. I don't know. At one point, I learned the reason why.
Oh.
I think it's because we've been doing it for longer than when June became. But anyway, so we kind of at our church we celebrate Pride every Sunday in
Oh.
June.
You're so special.
I don't. Maybe it is a special, or maybe it is just
Yeah.
we are stubborn. Maybe it's more stubbornness
It might be.
than specialness.
It might be. You're like so special, San Diego. I love it.
I forget. Have you been out here before?
Yeah. San Diego, I wanted to move there in the beginning of this year for some odd reason, but I also always have a desire to move somewhere like every 3 months. And I do the whole thing. I go search out the place. I find like a house or an apartment. I do the whole thing. I like plan it all out. Last year, I was supposed to be moving to Italy. So that's how I move. And right now, it's another location that I'm planning to move to. It's a thing. I think God just like helps me. I don't know why, honestly. But it's a thing that I do. So I know a little bit about San
Fascinating.
Diego
Okay.
because for like 3 months, it was like a situation.
Period
for me.
of time that
So,
was on
little
your
fun
horizon. That is a fun fact. Hey, let's do this
Yes.
really quick. I'm
Uh-huh.
gonna. I
Yeah.
keep waiting for the video and audio to sync
Okay.
up, and it's not. So I'm gonna kick you off. Just come right back on, and we'll see if we can get
Okay.
the things to sync back up, and that way it'll be a little easier to follow for the people at home. Okay, so come right
Okay.
back. This totes happens sometimes, and it is all good. It's a miracle to me that stuff like this ever works when it does. So then when there's little quirks like this, I'm just like, oh yeah, it's fine. Here she coming back. And let's hope that fixes the things.
Is it lined up?
It's lined up better. Yes. And I think it will find its way back home again. Yeah. Wonderful. Thank you. Okay.
Perfect.
That's funny that you just sort of every so often you're like, and now where am I going to move? But then you have it like, when's the last time you actually made a significant move?
Like 12. Wait, I moved to Colorado from Philly in 2012. So
Okay. So it's been a minute.
And that was like the only major place I've ever moved to. So now it just feels like it's necessary because I was on assignment, Christianese here. And so now the assignment is over. And so I'm just like, I have a digital business. I can live anywhere. So I think it's like a kid in the candy shop kind of experience where it's just like, the world is mine. So where do I want to go live?
Cool.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I love it. Speaking of kid in the candy shop, Yeamah, we are in Pride Month, as we established earlier. And I'm wondering if you would share with us, like, you can respond however you want, but the basic question is, what was maybe your first experience or interaction with Pride? How do you, when you think back, was it guns blazing? Or was it like sheepishly checking out from the corner? Was it, just tell us about your first experience that you want to with Pride.
And the audience should know I'm laughing because we prepared he told me what the questions were going to be and I was like prepared. So my first experience with Pride, I went in guns a-blazing. Okay. I was in Philadelphia and had come out to myself. I was like in my in-between college stage where like Jesus is just another higher state of consciousness, like free loving, life is good, but like, the Christian guilt in your back of your mind where you're like, Jesus, can I have some fun and like figure this stuff out later? Okay. So it's like 1920 Pride in Philadelphia. We have in Philly a place called the Gayborhood. And so like LGBT situations are real in Philly. And so there was actually a picture of me kissing this girl at a booth during the Pride Parade
All right.
that I had to. I think I deleted it because it was like on my MySpace or something like that. Like it was like
It was
really,
on
really
your
old.
MySpace.
Like
I
my
love that.
MySpace or somewhere else, and I like asked the person to like delete it because I was like, submitting myself to God, and I didn't want these kind of things to be out there. And so like, yeah, there was a picture of me full on in a situation like kissing this girl for Pride. Yeah.
So if I get this straight, you were in the neighborhood
Yes. Because
kissing
they
the
had a
ladies.
parade, so
Sure.
that's Pride.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yep.
Mhm.
Kissing the ladies, but also still having some semblance that is not where God wanted you to be and or whom God wanted you to be kissing. Was there tension there for you in that first Pride celebration?
The tension was drowned out by the alcohol, so it wasn't loud.
It was a very faint whisper.
It was a little, the silent voice of the Holy Spirit, very quietly, what I would think. But it was definitely in the back of my mind of maybe this isn't definitely where God wants me to be.
Okay.
So if I'm young enough, I'm in my early 20s, I can figure this stuff out when I'm like old, like in my 30s, which is funny now because I'm in my 30s. So, and I did figure it out. Thank you, God. But it was one of those things. You're young, you're having a good time, you're out here, and it's just like, let's do it. Why not? Yeah.
And also, take that photo down, please. I don't want the Lord to see it on the Lord's MySpace.
Right. I like needed to find it and like get rid of it. Like, oh my goodness, there's a picture of me kissing a woman when the people find out. It was, that Christian guilt is so delicious. But definitely went through all of that.
Yeah. Was it at least a good kiss? Do you remember it being a good kiss?
It wasn't the greatest.
Okay.
No.
Okay.
Yeah, unfortunately.
All right.
Because I was like walking with my crush at the time who didn't know that she was my crush. It was a very complicated emotional season of my life.
Walking with crush.
It was fun. Yeah. And there was a kissing booth and the girl was like, do you want, I was like, absolutely. I'm in Pride for the first time. What else am I going to do?
Okay.
But when in Rome,
Was there a little bit of you that was like, crush will see this and maybe have a little bit of feels about it, and that could work in my favor?
I'm sure that was in my beautiful young brain. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How did things work out with crush?
We're really good friends now.
Cool.
Really great friends. Yeah.
Right.
So it worked out pretty interesting. Yeah.
Right. Nice.
It was a lot.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Thanks for sharing.
Absolutely.
So for those who don't know Yeamah or Yeamah's work, definitely go follow on the Instagrams at Coach Yeamah, just what you see there on the screen, all squished together, at Coach Yeamah. I was going to say you bill yourself, but I don't know if that's true or if I've just tried to condense how you bill yourself into this phrase, but as a spirituality and sexuality coach. Okay. So you, the coach part of you is in those two identities, in those two ways in which humans try to maneuver through the world. We all have some sort of sexual identity, through some weird cocktail of nature and nurture that we still don't really understand. We just know that it's out there, it's real. There's not one category that we're all sort of born into, and then there's aberrations from that. So we like, okay, that's not a real thing. So people have a sexuality, and then for many people, they have a sort of spiritual desire to engage with the world in that way. And specifically, I believe you work with those who are in the Christian tradition, and have experienced a tension between those two identities. Can I be Christian and queer? Can I be queer and Christian? And so you help coach people through that. So I'm wondering if you would share just maybe like what's one of the biggest things that keeps those two at odds and at war with each other? What's one of the, I don't want to, obviously people should pay for your services, so let's not give away the whole thing.
Right. Well,
the
beautiful
tease.
thing as a coach is that when you work with a coach, your work is very tailored to you. So I can give out all the information and you
Oh,
still may
sweet.
need someone to walk you through it.
I love that.
So yeah, the thing that comes up and the biggest hurdle that I see, which for me is, I don't know if it's interesting, but it does take me aback a little bit to see it consistently come up, because sometimes you get so much further in the work that you kind of forget the feelings of the people still like behind there, which is this very intense fear of hell. There is, if I go ahead and accept this part of my sexuality, my sexual identity, am I really, even though, like, I'm not sure if I believe in hell or believe in heaven, but there is still this underlying fear that at the end of your life, you're going to go and meet Jesus, and Jesus is going to say, you had it wrong the whole time. Go say hi to Satan. Okay. Like, you're going to hell and you're now going to be forever separated from me. And the people that I work for, not work for, yeah, I do work for them, I serve them. But the people that I work with have such a beautiful desire to know God, and to serve God, and to please God, to live a life that's honoring to God. And so there's a tension that is saying I can't fully love God and be faithful to God and be a good Christian if I go ahead and give into, because that's what it can seem like, you're given into this lower part of yourself by accepting that you're part of the LGBTQ plus community. So it's the tension that I had doing Pride, when my first Pride that I carried with me for years, literally until my 30s. So I understand, and that's what I help people work with. And I shared this on my Instagram recently. One of the most painful things that I see is that as you're in that tension, what religion or bad theology, as Kevin would say, Kevin Garcia, bad theology would tell you, is that you cannot trust yourself. And so you don't know really, like, is it God speaking to me? Is it my flesh? Is it doctrines of demons that are taking me down the wrong road? Is the voice inside of me when I ask God if he loves me and I hear yes, the same voice that's saying it's okay for you to love someone of the same gender? Is it okay for me to not identify as a certain gender? Is that the same voice? And there's a terrible back and forth that happens that is actually really dangerous to our mental and physical health. And that's the thing, like, I'm so coming after, because it is the most natural thing as human beings that we have the ability to hear God. It's not like a Christian thing. It's a human thing, because you're made in the image of God. So your inner voice, your higher self, whatever that is, you are able to trust it because it's a good voice that's always out to protect you and show you how loved you are.
It's
And
a
what the
good
religion tells
voice
us,
that's
it's a
always
good
out there to
voice.
protect you. Did you hear that, people?
Always.
It's a
Yes.
good
It's a good
voice.
voice.
And this is not to
It
say that that
is.
voice can't get you into trouble, and or sometimes that voice isn't wrong. Okay? So this
Right.
isn't
Uh-huh.
like a foolproof system. So you're
Yeah.
not saying let's just swing the pendulum the other way and
No.
always trust every instinct. What we're saying,
Yeah.
we're just saying that instinct is not inherently bad and should not be ignored.
No.
That
Mm-mm.
the fear of hell. So
Yeah.
I one of the things that I think about is how religious ideas, such
Mm-hmm.
as the idea of hell. Well, first of all, the idea of hell, like as we think of it today, is
Mm-hmm.
only a couple hundred years old. Like, thanks Dante for screwing everything
Yeah.
up.
Seriously.
Good gravy. But just any sort of doctrine like that, these religious ideas are given to us at some point
Mm-hmm.
along our growth. Could
Yeah.
be, a young child in Sunday school, or a kid at home with parents, or youth group,
Mm-hmm.
or even just sitting there listening to like whatever it is. As we grow, the same time that our brains are receiving true information like 2 + 2 = 4 and how photosynthesis
Mm-hmm.
works, like our brain receives
Mm-hmm.
all these facts that we're told about how the world works. At that same time, we're also being told things like there's a God who is holy and cannot stand
Mm-hmm.
your sin, and there's a Bible that is perfect and every word in it is infallible and has to be listened to, and if you
Mm-hmm.
don't believe this, then, or if you do this thing, you'll go to hell. Like, the brain's, it's not like we have two buckets of truth, right? Or it's like,
Yeah.
as I put these in the scientific mathematical bucket of truth, and then I put these in sort of the metaphorical spiritual truth that maybe I should hold loosely because possibly one day I want to re-examine them. No, they just all go into the truth bucket in our brain. So then
Yes, that's so
fast
true.
forward like 10, 20, 30, 40 years down the road, and someone like you comes along and says, actually, what if God is super cool with you feeling good? Like what if you're actually made to feel, and what if that instinct inside of you, that draw towards someone of the same gender, like what if that's okay? And like what if you should follow that and enjoy that? And like what if the Bible maybe isn't exactly so you say those sort of things, it makes sense, is what I try to normalize for people. It makes sense that you would initially have some resistance, like that fear that comes online. That makes sense because it'd be the same as someone coming along saying, I'd like you to reconsider 2 + 2 = 4. Just rethink through that. Your brain's gonna be like, hold on now. For years we've had this other idea. So anyway, I try to tell people, maybe that's the Holy Spirit. Maybe it's also just your brain being like trying to unlearn this, I don't know why the brain speaks like a robot, but that's what just happened right there.
Well, it's the brain's there for survival. And so all the brain has to work with is past memories. And so in order to help you survive, it has to put in context the things that you're going through. And so what may be coming up is old things that you learned from the past.
Yes.
So recognizing that helps put things in context for you. But the beautiful thing about the truth is that it feels good because it feels like freedom, and it's an easy way back. Doesn't have to take forever, right? It's love feels like something, freedom feels like something, truth feels like something. Because if you believe Jesus is all of those things, then that has to be it. Because Jesus is the life, truth, and all that good stuff, right? So sometimes people are like, oh, it's going to take forever for me to get it. Actually, no, because really your body and like your spirit already knows what the truth is if you were to like learn how to trust it, which is most of the work that I do to help people learn how to like trust that voice that's full of love, because we all have it, right?
Okay.
So
I want to go there to the next question because I think they're connected. The whole idea of helping people learn to trust. My perception from the outside as a straight identifying person, is that queerness is this significant aid in helping people to learn to trust the inner voice. And that's a thought that may or may not be grounded in anything. It's just an instinct that I have. And I wonder for you, as you think about queerness, what gift has it, like what gifts has it provided you as an individual? And maybe how does it provide what gifts to the church? Because I think honestly, the church is like, we would do well to open our doors, not just to queer people, but to what all of queerness is. I'd love to hear your thoughts on that. What are some gifts of that?
I mean, we give everything, okay? So here's the fashion and all the beauty. No, but creativity.
You're not wrong. Where's the lie? Where's the lie?
What else? But for me, the gift that has been to me is really helped me to know what it feels like to come to God naked in my soul, and to like really be vulnerable before the divine, because I wasn't, when I was coming through reconciling my faith and my spirituality and going through all of that, there was no outside voices that I could really lean on or trust, because I could go and look up all the, the different side A and side B and the debates and all of that. But the relationship that I have with God is just me and God. People say like at the end of your life, it's not going to be you and the person you argue with about your your identity, right? So it was really about me learning to really have faith that if I do hear and believe that I know God, and God is saying, this is your superpower, go be queer, am I going to follow that voice and ignore everybody else? Let God be true and every man be a liar. Am I going to be the Abraham and say, I'm going to leave my father's house, everything that's familiar with me, my religion, the way I have grown to understand it and really follow God? And so it's really a faith that I see in the Hall of Fame in Hebrews 11, right? Of, are you going to take your son with you and go up to the mountain and trust that God's going to provide? Are you going to trust that it's actually God that you're hearing? So I've learned how to do that, and I help my clients do that. And I think for the church is really what we can start to help them to see, and beyond that, where you're hearing God and you're having this faith that feels like, oh, there were only faith like this back in the Old Testament. No, we have to have that faith right now, and to live out our truth and to celebrate the diversity of God. And so what the queerness brings to the church is learning how to celebrate, because the church is really, really, really good
Yeah.
at the rules and the
Yep.
forced joy
Yep.
and
The
whatever,
forced
but
joy.
that freedom that
It's so
freedom that
true.
comes when you're like, no, I'm pretty sure, in the confidence, like,
Yeah.
I'm really, really sure that God is speaking to me, that I'm hearing God, and I'm going to celebrate as a form of worship to God who I am.
Mm-hmm.
That's liberation.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I think some people call it like liberation theology or something like that. But I love celebration theology, because let's get some partying going on, because I'm all about the parties, obviously. Okay. Let's let's party it up. Let's get some real celebration in there. And other than just your queer identity coming online to where you can bring that and celebrate that before God, as a straight identifying person, there are things about you that's creative and unique, because God's creative and unique, that you can begin to step in to and break out of the line of the, the robot world. I'm gonna,
Yes.
get a job and survive, and that like you can step out of that and actually pursue the giftings that God's given you and reach the world in a way that God's called you to reach the world.
Yeah.
If we think about the scripture that says, whether you fully believe it, like it's 100% accurate, but Jesus is not going to come until the kingdom has been preached to the ends of the world. So if Jesus is not here yet, that means we're out of alignment, because the whole creation is groaning for the manifestations of the sons of God. You don't know your son of God identity requires celebration, and if you can't step into that, you can't do what you've been called to do. So that's what we bring to the church. Like, start actually being the church.
Yes.
And going out there and doing the thing in the way
Yes.
that God's called you to do the thing, in your type of flavor that he's called you to do it in,
Come on.
So yeah, that's it.
I freaking love that. Thank you. It strikes me as though queerness is also this great disruptor. And I think about Jesus as being a great disruptor to particular expressions of the Jewish faith that had lost the plot, particular disruptor of how to engage with the Roman Empire. And then, as Paul starts to create these churches, these experiments, like, can we really create these communities of incredible diversity? Like, can we put Jews and Gentiles, men and women, rich and poor? Can we put them all together and maybe practice a new way of humanity? Like, freaking disruption, right?
Right.
And then fast forward, and here we are today, where it seems to me like so much of the church is just kind of lockstep, like right in line. There's really not a whole lot of distinction between empire and church anymore. I mean, we say there's a separation of church and state, but it's just really like, look at your dollar bill. I mean, there's just the Christian religion is everywhere. And part of what I feel that our queer siblings have done at our church is they've brought this beautiful disruption. Like, what if we just didn't do things the way they've always been done? And that's heteronormativity is like, yeah, let's just repeat these patterns of how we've always done things and play out these roles. And then along come the queer folk, and they're like, what if instead we did this and had more fun while doing it, and it looked better and it sounded better? Anyway, so I just feel...
Oh, I love that.
Yeah. So I know that has been true for our church, is that our queer siblings have been disruptions in the best possible way, and we're better for it. Absolutely better for it.
Agreed.
All right.
I love that. It's true.
Our time's almost at an end here. I try to tell people that I go about 60 minutes. I've got one last question here, and you can take all the time you want for it. Yes, I agree, Tommy. Tommy says time to flip over tables. Flipping tables. You are a Black bisexual woman,
Yes.
and I would love to know if you're willing to share like what being in the midst of those different identities, the intersection of those identities, what that experience is like for you.
Hmm.
And you can respond however you would like to in that, but would love to just hear from you
Okay.
on that.
Yeah. So, well, it's almost like a triple, how I want to say threat, but sometimes it doesn't feel like that. But it's like
Some people are
there's
triply threatened by you, but that's not what you
yes,
mean.
pretty much. But it's just so the Black experience is unique and beautiful, and in the spaces that I have been, as being, it's like being a triple minority, really. And so, being a Black woman, specifically being an African woman, is just fabulous. I absolutely love it. But I have been in spaces, in Christian environments, mainly white male straight environments, where that was not celebrated. So that's been a complexity that's been added to my experience that I'm very aware of. Being bisexual in the LGBTQ letter funness, there are invisibility that happens with the bisexual person, because it's
Yeah.
like pick a side, and you're like, I
Right.
don't want to,
Yeah.
because I actually do like both, and
Yeah.
it's hard for people to accept and understand. And it's, you have the concern of, if you end up with a guy, are you now, as a woman ending up with a man, are you like betraying the LGBTQ plus now because you're straight appearing and passing in your relationship? So there's that complexity to that as well. But then the beautiful part of it is I get to go out and I can date anybody. So this is great. And then
All the kissing booths.
and then
Just bring them.
all the kids, everybody come on in, okay? And then you have being a woman in this world that supposedly is ran by men.
Yeah.
Beyonce, prophetess Beyonce corrected that and told us that women run the world. Thank you, Beyonce, for that.
Preach it in.
But it's
Live it into just we will live into that
okay,
existence. We gotta speak it and then live it.
right.
Yes.
Exactly. Being in the church, it's interesting to see how people navigate your gender to put you in a subservient or not as anointed place. And that's just the Western Christianity. When you look at how the divine feminine is represented in the church, but then when you broaden your perspective and see in many cultures around the world that God is actually a woman to them, because women have the womb and we birth and all those different things. And so it's really about finding the, not the balance, because I don't want to be balanced with racism or homophobia or whatever it is. It's finding the juice, like the good juicy flavor of who you are and how it all meets together. And then again, celebrating that I get to be the Black bisexual Nubian queen that I am, and then you get to take in all of this glory. So you're welcome.
I
So
do
yeah.
take in the glory, Yeamah. And I appreciate you saying you're welcome, because I actually am very grateful for you. Like you, I celebrate
Oh,
you,
thanks,
all
Colby.
of you. I admire you immensely. I look up to you. I think you are leading us in some really profound and revolutionary ways. And every time
Yeah.
I hear from you, I learn more, I'm inspired more, and I just think you're great. I think you're absolutely great.
Awesome. Thank you. And I love coming and hanging out with you guys. You're so hilarious to me. Like, I literally listen and I just like laugh out loud to myself as you're talking. It's amazing. Thank you for doing the work that you're doing. And I'm excited about your new course that's up there.
Yeah, me too.
So that's going to be amazing.
Me too. It's been really,
Yeah.
we launched it the beginning of this month, and
Hmm.
we knew right from the get-go that yes, it'll be a course that we invite people to pay for because of just
Hmm.
it all takes money. Like, so that's just part
Exactly.
of it.
Right.
And we also
Hmm.
knew that we have to give this away to free for whoever needs it and can't afford it.
Hmm.
Like, so
Okay.
we've given away like I think 75 full courses already in the first couple weeks, and I'm
Wow.
just beyond grateful
Wow.
that people are responding the way that they have. So anyway, yeah, I'm super stoked for it, and it's a lot of fun. In fact, I just today put the final touches on a way for groups to do the courses, so people can buy like small group packages or large group packages.
That's amazing.
And so that's fun. I'll kind of disseminate that here in the next few days. But anyway,
That's
thank you.
exciting. Congratulations with all of that.
Thanks, Yeamah. Happy Pride to you for the rest. What do you got?
Thank
7
you.
more
You
days
too.
here in June.
Yes, but the fun part's coming up this weekend. So yes,
Have a
we're
blast.
going to be doing it up. Thank you very much. And thank you everyone for having me. It's a joy hanging out with you guys.
All right. Love you, friend.
Bye.
Bye. So that is the glorious Coach Yeamah. Please go check her out. You should see her website and Instagram information in the description below. Hey, thanks for hanging out with me today on this live perspective show. I will be back next week for our final session in our Pride Month conversation with Julie Rogers. Julie's book Out Love dropped yesterday, and it's been fun to watch her celebrate that launch and to celebrate it with her. So I'm really looking forward to having her on the show next week to get to talk about her book Out Love, her memoir of coming out within this evangelical machine. And I think she's got a really unique story, and I'm excited. I've exchanged emails with her, but I've yet to meet her. So that'll be fun to get to meet her next week. And then as always, their website's gone now, but it'll come back. If you want to sign up to get Perspective Shift, you know where to go and how to do that. I don't think I have any other house note information to give you other than to just say thanks for being with me and have a glorious rest of your day. I'm going camping, y'all. So deuces, peace out. Wait, what's the saying? Goodbye. Thanks for watching this week's episode of Perspective Shift. I'm going to now invite you to do one of 3 things, or do them all if you're an overachiever. First, why don't you go ahead and subscribe to my free Perspective Shift newsletter. You can do that by going to colbymartin.substack.com. This will ensure that each week the articles that I write arrive safely in your inbox. Second, if you're watching this on YouTube, just go ahead and hit subscribe on my channel. That'd be awesome. And or if you're watching this on Facebook, would you click like on my page? For me, this is a win-win in that it helps me know that you're out there and that you care. Plus, it helps you know when I'm going live. For all my other work, including books that I've written or sermons that I've preached, head on over to colbymartinonline.com. Thanks for watching, and I hope you'll join me live next week.